You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Chrissy Blasinsky with NACS, and I'm joined today by another guest who's been on our show before, Dr. Ben Chapman from NC State University, a food safety specialist, and also one of our inaugural food safety conference guest speakers.
Yes,
who rated very well, by the way. I don't know if I shared the numbers with you, but yes, everybody enjoyed your presentation as always.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So I'm glad you were able to make it out for that. And the general consensus is that we're going to have a second annual NACS Food Safety Conference in 2023, most likely around the next show as well.
Good.
Hopefully you'll come back. We're a little closer to your neck of the woods in Atlanta than Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'll be back. And it was
minus the gambling.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it was. I'll tell you, it was exciting to be part of that, and it's not often that you kind of get in on, I don't know, I guess the ground floor of the food safety journey of an industry, and certainly there's been lots of food safety that's happened with lots of NACS members for quite some time, but it was cool to just be part of that for the first time. So I appreciate the invite, and I'll be back. I'll put it on my calendar right now
with bells on. That's
yes.
Right. Yeah. And so the fun thing about having you on board for that conference too, is I know within the food safety space, our industry is a little bit unique, right? Like we're not a manufacturing facility where the same thing's happening every day. And it's in a confined space. I mean, we're talking about convenience store chains that either from like 2 stores to 2,000 operating in multiple states, multiple jurisdictions, multiple regulations, multiple health codes. I mean, it is not a one-size-fits-all industry, and food service for us is not that way anyway. So when you get into the food safety space, it's a different beast in some respects.
Well, and I think it's really it's something that I joked as I was at the NACS meeting and talking with folks that I was meeting and had maybe seen elsewhere, but just really focused, on what it's like in the C-store space, and think in the food safety world, we probably have this very naive like view of, what are we talking about here? Like roller hot dogs and nacho cheese, and really maybe 30 years ago that was the case, but certainly there's been so much change in just what's available to shoppers at C-stores, and then how it's prepared and how it's managed, and just hearing some of the stories and experiences through the workshop and session really highlighted that, because I mean, you've got so many different members doing so many different things, from manufacturing their own things in private label brands to assembling full fresh meals right there. And that's truthfully, that variability is exciting to be part of, because it's not a one size fits all. And I just I really appreciated the invite, and to be able to be part of the start of this it's really cool for me.
Yeah. And so we're going to air this podcast during the week of Thanksgiving. So I know there's a lot of, fun, consumery food safety things out there. Number one being, don't wash your bird.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Which I know a lot of people, but my grandma always washed her bird.
Yep.
But that just kind of leads into a lot of things where, one of the things, should bring this up. So you brought up the new research during the conference. It had not been peer reviewed yet. But I was just wondering if maybe you could give a little sneak peek into what that was. Cause I know and I'll just go ahead and give it away. It's on hand washing, right? Yeah. But that's the number one offender in the food safety world. Lots of times is somebody not washing their hands. So maybe roll with that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we do a lot of research here at NC State in my group, and coupled with a couple other groups, trying to understand the really why people do what they do, and what are those food safety impacts, right? And that sounds really vague, but ultimately it often boils down to what's hand hygiene look like? How are we handling cleaning and sanitizing? And I think I'd add, certainly over the course of the pandemic, we talk now a lot about disinfection on top of that, which just makes things even a little more complicated. And then temperature control, right? Like what for foods that need it. Sometimes that's cooking temperatures, sometimes that's storage temperatures, sometimes it's cooling, whatever. But a lot of the work that we've been doing here at NC State for the last 5 or 6 years focuses on meal preparation. Largely recently, we've been looking at how consumers handle food in the home, but it gives us a good insight into the world of hand washing. And we do this in a way where we'll bring people into these it's a real kitchen in a simulated place. It's like I was going to say simulated kitchen, but it's all working. Like you can make all the food you want, but it's not someone's home kitchen, right? It's a little bit different. And I ask them to prepare foods, and we do that with commercial food handlers as well as with those who are consumers. And ultimately, what we see with both groups is that there are lots of intentions to do the right thing at the right time, but there are multiple reasons why people kind of fail at it, right? So if I just break down hand washing into its basic form, there's soap, there's water, there's some sort of lather, there's some drying that's involved. There's lots of different ways to do it.
I'm supposed to sing happy birthday or something while
right.
I'm doing it.
Time matters. And
right.
and I guess what we're seeing with the research that we're doing is that, well, the more that someone attempts to wash their hands matters more than whether they do it right exactly like we prescribe all the time. Because what's prescribed, whether and again, this is probably be controversial for our friends in the in the world of FDA and CDC, but that's all right. What we would prescribe might not be based on the most up-to-date science, right? You talk about happy birthday, washing my hands for 20 seconds versus washing it for 8 seconds. In some of the work that we've done specifically with a couple of different types of contaminant products, doesn't really seem to make a difference when it comes to whether they're moving those pathogens around the kitchen. There's, so,
right.
and so that, I think that's where we're going to go with the world of hand washing, which I think is really important for NACS and NACS members, right? Just because food's being handled and prepared in a way in stores, not like it was, again, a while ago, where hand hygiene matters. And so, the takeaways that we have are the more that we encourage hand hygiene and the less that we worry about, are they doing the specifics right all the time? That's I think where we're going to go. And
sure. And then those behaviors, though, go into what we were talking about with food safety culture, too, when we speak about the behaviors that you want your employees to model, that you want them to be doing continuously. It just becomes human nature that this is how I'm going to wash my hands. This is the right thing to do.
Yep. Yeah. And on that, what other people around them are doing matters too, right? Having someone who's a manager or someone who's in charge, modeling that drives things. And then also kind of saying, hey, correcting people when it's not done correctly, to really establish this is just the way it is in our specific store or in our entire organization. Like you said, the difference between 20 and 2,000 stores, it adds a level of complication the bigger you are, but it's still the same basic cultural practices, right? This is just how we'll behave as we're preparing food here.
Yeah. And I should say, too, that you're watching these people wash their hands, right? They go into a room, there's video camera, they're little free range chickens in there, wash your hands and see what they do.
Yeah. And that we don't even tell them that it's about food safety in some of our studies and some of the work that we do. And what we're trying to do is get a sense of what people do when an inspector's not there, right? Or when no one's really watching them for these actions. And
what are you doing when no one's looking?
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting for us to think about the data that we that we showed with a couple of things that it's, I'm thinking more about hand hygiene as I go forward, not just explicitly hand washing, that there's hand washing with soap and there's sanitizer. Those two things in conjunction with each other are better than one or the other on its own, depending on how soiled someone's hands are. The hand sanitizer in some cases performs as well as hand washing. Like all of that stuff, I think we'll see more and more research develop over the next 5 or 10 years that'll give us a better sense of where we can focus. Because ultimately, if I think there's this, I'll probably get all the numbers wrong on this, but there is like somewhat of a famous study that came out, or someone calculated something maybe 15 years ago that said, okay, if I was to watch all of the meal preparation that happens in a restaurant and had a proper hand washing step that was as per the food code at every single time, that it would be like a third of the labor cost would be in hand washing, right? Like, and it's, whatever the calculation is. It's kind of like, okay, well, how do we make it more effective and more efficient, right? Like the answer is not, oh, well, we shouldn't do hand washing or hand hygiene. It's what are the tools that we can use to do it better, quicker, and understand, does it, what's the difference between 7 seconds of lather and 20 seconds of lather? And if there's no measurable risk reduction, then why are we adding additional time burden?
Yeah. We talked about hand washing a little bit with your buddy, Don Schaffner on and I don't remember the specifics because I meant to go back and listen to it, but I just remember him saying that, the water temperature used to be at a point where it's like, it was so hot you could liquefy bacon grease with it. And that's what people were supposed to be, how we were supposed to be washing our hands.
Right.
Like basically melting your skin off. And but I think to your point, that's we can debunk those.
Yeah. And I think, like, as a scientist who works in this area, this is, I don't know, it's not an uphill battle, but it's going to take more time and data and justification to break the paradigm a little more, because I think our colleagues in the realm of public health have been really, really like strict on, hey, hand washing is king, right? Like there's not much else that we can do if we, and are not yet willing to back off of, well, let's just get everybody to do it all the time. The work that we've done, especially with consumers, we're seeing like, I don't know what, like 6,600 hand washing attempts that we viewed in observations in our kitchen over the course of a series of like 5 years worth of projects. And like 85 of them were correct. Right. That's
ridiculous, Ben.
Yeah. Well, and so
that's downright terrifying.
It is. But also, and this is, one of the things that Don and I talk about a lot on our podcast and when we're in person is, do we have the risk calculation wrong then, right? Because if we know that hand washing is so poor as per all of the, like, just checking the box every single time, we know that these the shortcuts are taken, right? Like whether it's someone, is going to wipe their hands on their, apron or on a surface towel that they're using, or they're not going to wipe their hands at all during drying, or they're only going to lather for, 6 seconds versus 10 to 15 as the food code says, or whatever it is, that if those things individually mattered so much, then we would expect to see exponentially more illnesses. And it's not to say that we don't, we see 48 million cases of foodborne illness a year, but like if 97% of the time when someone's washing their hands, they're not doing it as per the regulation, then either we're like, well, it's probably a combination of things. Either we're missing illnesses, or the regulation's not is antiquated, or we're not measuring it right, like whatever it is, but it needs more study, and it needs updated policy that corresponds with that.
Yeah, agree. Well, that's where you come in.
I guess. Yeah. Try like, and it's funny. Like if I go back in my career 20 years ago when I started in food safety, I don't think I would have thought that I was like doing stuff to impact food safety policy. Like that wasn't what wasn't like my aspirational goal. But when I got into it, it's like, whoa, wait a second. We could actually like change, we're working on a project right now about or just finished one project and are starting a new project on safe handling instructions on meat and poultry packages. And it's like we might impact those instructions that are on like millions of packages a year from some of the work that we're doing. It's like, whoa, that's, I don't know. It's like kind of powerful stuff. I thought I'd just be like, I don't know, taking samples of things and be
maybe
like,
you
how
should
much
just create some big label that just says wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, like on repeat, and just like slap it on.
Yeah.
After you handle this, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands.
Or we need like a whatever RFID or what are the ones, what the near field stuff?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
NFC.
okay, NFC. Yeah. If I've got that in my like package label and it's close to me, that I get a little alert on my phone that's like, oh, wait a second, wash your hands and clean the, clean and sanitize the prep area. Right. Like, there's
a trap door in your kitchen where someone falls down it because they didn't wash their hands.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's been, I don't know, it's been a fun area to be in. And it's for all the, I don't know, like, all of my criticism of us not being fast enough in catching up, we still do a good job generally across our field as food safety professionals, as generating new data, utilizing new science, and really, knowing that it's a slow like boat to turn. That at least every year people are trying to turn the boat, which is good.
Yeah. There was, I was looking at some of the survey results from the food safety conference, and someone had a suggestion where it was like, we need to get back to the basics. And I agree with that. Like, we did talk some pretty high level stuff. We were talking about food safety culture. We were talking about your study. And we were doing some scenario planning, what happens if, X, Y, Z, who do you call, what do you do? But just the basics, like we're talking about now, that's the foundation for everything. Right.
Yeah.
But I was, other than hand washing, maybe if you don't mind walking through some other, what you would consider the foundation that everybody, like, you need to get these 3 things right before you can even attempt to move on.
Yeah. So I guess a really good starting point for me is, and it's well rooted in the literature out there about like risk factors in in regulated facilities, like, and I would say everything from a C-store to a meat and poultry processing plant, like, doesn't really matter what it is, somewhere where food's being made, handled, whatever, having someone in charge who has like a level of understanding of really like what the risks are, why they're a risk, and that they have some power and to like, highlight to people that they're doing something that's risky, and be able to report further up above them that they need additional resources when something goes wrong. Like, I know that sounds like real loosey-goosey.
They need to be empowered to make the decisions on the fly.
Yeah. And that they've got like organizational support, right? To be the person who's making those decisions. And to me, that's like foundation number 1 is, like the basic is you've got someone there who knows why this is important and what to do. And that's like training. It's, it plays into the world of food safety culture, certainly, because it sort of cuts across everything that's happening within the facility or organization. And then that person needs to know about what are the mechanics of risks, right? And risk factors. And so that's the hand washing, it's cross-contamination, it's temperature control, stuff that I'd mentioned earlier that I think, if we look at what causes foodborne illness, it's largely people, right? Like not like, well, if we're talking about norovirus, the pathogen is from people, but it's people decisions, right? It's a decision not to wash hands or not to use a thermometer or to, utilize the same cutting board or food contact surface for raw and ready to eat, or to, and I think probably something that I think about when it comes to C stores is like show up to work while being ill, because like that, and there's like a people function with that. It's like, how encouraged is it or supported if you are sick, right? And to not be there. And then how do you like manage staffing and labor, right? Like all of the stuff that we're dealing with throughout the industry. So for me, a foundation's like thinking about the people and having someone there and having them empowered, like you said, and then you can get to the hand washing and all the rest of the stuff.
That's good advice. So you mentioned the podcast that you and Don do. It's called Risky or Not.
Yeah.
It's fun. It is a fun podcast because some of that stuff it's gross, but it's funny.
But gross or not is a that's a different
gross
podcast.
Or not.
Yeah,
gross or not. Yeah. Is this disgusting or not? But I'll go back to the bird, because somebody might have been like, wait, why shouldn't I rinse my bird? So I want you to tell the world why you should not rinse that dang turkey.
Well, so, and it's like a tough one, because if you go
risky.
Right. First of all, it's risky. It's never decreasing the risk. It's only ever increasing the risk. Maybe you net out at equal risk, but I mean, there was some research that was done about 25 years ago about this, because theoretically we knew, hey, we might be able to spread pathogens all around a kitchen. And so some researchers in the UK, some of our colleagues, contaminated whole turkeys and whole chicken, went into a laboratory setting around a sink and washed them like they believe people would wash it at home. And then they essentially measured the splash zone from that bird to find out, okay, where can I find Campylobacter and Salmonella? How far away? And they were able to demonstrate about a yard from the faucet itself, they could find it. So we updated that work about 4 years ago by bringing in actual people that cook in their home, primary meal preparers, and recruiting people who self-described that they were chicken washers. Now, it wasn't like, I say that in a little bit in jest, because it wasn't like we put out an advertisement like, hey, are you a chicken washer? We're looking for you, kind of thing. But we do a lot of cooking studies and observations. And so we recruited people with a series of questions. And one of them happened to be, during food preparation, if I'm handling raw poultry, I always wash the chicken first. And if they said yes, we're like, you are in our study.
You're in, man.
And so we were just really interested in how people would handle that, that food and what it meant. And what we found was, it doesn't, in a normal setting, and we looked at like almost 300 people, they're not really all the time spreading it a yard from the faucet. But what they are doing is often highly contaminating the sink basin, and in a pretty good like 3 or 4 inch circle around the sink. And the problem that we really run into is that the sink is not like, it's not something that if you were to ask me, like even as a food safety professional, prior to like doing a lot of work looking at how people cook and handle food, I wouldn't look at the sink as a food preparation area in my kitchen. Like I look at it as like a dumping ground of pathogens. And what's become,
I'll never look at my sink again.
Right.
The same way.
Well, what's been apparent is the more and more that we creepily watch people make food in our kitchens, we find that people do meal preparation in the sink. Stuff like, and again, it makes sense when I say it, like there's going to be a place where I'm going to open up a bag of lettuce or take a head of lettuce, I'm going to put it into a colander. I'm going to do a rinse of that. And that involves dropping the colander into the sink, running water, and there's a potential for bouncing water back up. And that's what that's the long-winded reason to why it's risky, right? So if people do and just can't get over the fact that they like that it's riskier to wash a turkey or a chicken, if they still want to do that, it's treating that like that sink like it is the outside of all poultry, right? That it is the potential that it is contaminated because you've just spread all the stuff from that bird into the sink. So cleaning and sanitizing it is really, really important.
Right. And there's a difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting.
Yeah. And it's funny, like that's another thing that we've seen in all of our studies is that again, and as food safety professionals, I think we have a pretty good understanding. It's like, okay, I clean with soap to remove soil, and then I sanitize after that soil is done. And that is not, I don't know. I won't put a number on it, but it's not the way that everybody operates, right?
It's not.
Yeah. It sometimes you have folks who are like, hey, I don't even clean. I'm just going to sanitize right afterwards. And that inhibits the efficacy of the sanitizer because it's not meant to be used on like heavily organic soiled surfaces. And then we've got lots of people that just rinse with water and then let it air dry or remove some of the soil with soap and then don't do a sanitizing step. Like all of that stuff is the more we watch people, the more we realize that's in play. Maybe 70% of the population does a really good job, but there are these outliers who are like, yeah, I do lots of different things. And it's like, it's because we learn how to do this stuff from like what we were taught from our parents, or I think there's a really different like line. If someone's worked in food service or in food preparation somewhere, they've been taught something a little bit different and they handle foods somewhat differently because of that. And so, my parents grew up not wearing seatbelts, so let's just get that out of the way right now.
I mean, there's things that you need to unlearn from what the previous generation thought was okay.
Yes. Yeah. And we see a lot of that in the world of food and food safety. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Ben, it's always a pleasure to have you on. And I know our industry, the folks who attended our food safety conference, were really excited to get a chance to meet you and to learn more about you. And if anybody who's listening wants to find you, how do we find you?
So you can find one of my podcasts that you mentioned already at riskyornot.co. And that's one that I do with my colleague, Don Schaffner from Rutgers. And then Don and I also have another podcast called Food Safety Talk, where we get together every couple of weeks for 2 hours and talk about what's going on in the world of food safety and what we're doing. And so you can find that at foodsafetytalk.com. And then you can find, this one's a little longer, but you can find all the other food safety stuff that I do at our NC State food safety program, which is called Safe Plates. And that's at foodSafety.ces.ncsu.edu. I wish it was a much shorter URL.
That's all right. Yeah. I'll put it online with the podcast so people can just click on it from the website.
Awesome.
If they didn't remember that.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Ben. It was great I can see you. Nobody else can because we're on video. But it was great to see you and talk to you. And we'll hook up again soon.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.